Right. Hello and welcome. This is After Credits Podcast, and today we're doing our review on The Substance, new kind of horror, uh, like mind bender kind of film. I would like to start with a spoiler-free, if you would like to do that as well. I've just thrown
Okay.
this on you, but I would like to talk a little bit spoiler-free
Yeah.
because I actually do like the way this film, I think the less you know, the better, probably. And you saw
I
it before
think,
me, and I think
yeah,
based on how you treated it to me, I think you agree.
yeah. Okay, I don't want to tell you too much. Just let you go in blind, just
So
experience it,
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think that's a good call on your part, and I think I'll do the same for the audience.
Yeah.
So just quickly, I actually really quite like this film. I don't know, it was just right up my alley. And if you're curious as to whether you should go see this, I would say if you enjoy things like Black Mirror or The Twilight Zone or The Thing, kind of body horror, psychological horror, with also like an added strange gimmick, definitely like check this out. This is like a kind of 2 hour 20 minute like Black Mirror episode essentially. So that's who I would recommend this to. I would say it is
Yeah.
quite gory at times.
Quite,
Yeah.
quite
And
gory.
it's quite gory at times and then at some points indulgently so.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, I guess anything you want to add to that quickly is like a spoiler free?
Yeah, like just you've pretty much set it up. Like you explained it well. I think obviously going with the added notice, like it is wild. I wouldn't eat during it for
Yeah.
most people's.
I did ask you
Uh,
for snack recommendations before
yeah,
I went in. You were like,
I
you might
did
not want to
say, I
eat.
was like, yeah, you might not want to eat. Um, but yeah, like as long as you like the idea of going in blind is good at that, but at the same time, it's that type of film where it's like you should be semi-aware of how
What you're in for. Yeah.
wild it gets. I was kind of saying that to Robert today because he's kind of asking me like, should I watch it? I was like, yeah, honestly, yeah, just experience it. And he's like, yeah, but is it scary though? I'm like, no, it's not a scary film. I wouldn't call it that. It's just like freaking mind bending, you kind of
Well,
described earlier.
I wouldn't
You
say
know,
it's scary among like a modern audience, but like I feel
yeah.
like like my parents would probably turn their nose up at quite a lot at the end of this film.
So yeah, I mean, I'll
So
have my thoughts as well.
yeah.
100%.
So I guess I can go into a little bit of things that are spoiler free, but are a bit more about the film itself.
Sure.
I think I'll maybe talk about specific examples of these things when we get into spoilers, but I'll talk about the general points. The cinematography is pretty. I felt like it was pretty self-indulgent, and I don't think it was always like it was taking a lot of swings in terms of like trying to set up nice shots and nice cuts and edits and stuff. And sometimes they pay off and they're really satisfying and they look really nice and they're just nice to watch. Sometimes I think it is a bit too self-indulgent. There's a lot of like macro photography in this where things are very, very close to the camera, and sometimes that's for like to make you uncomfortable. Like if it's a character's face, that happens especially at the
Especially,
start.
especially with something like it as well. Like,
Yes,
yeah.
and those are usually effective. But I'm meaning more like there's a lot of quote unquote B-roll in this film that you would see on like a Joshua Wiseman recipe video. Like you know what I mean? There's a
Right,
lot of
right.
like very close up to a wine glass or a syringe or something like that. You know, and it's
Yeah.
very like it does that a lot, and it does become a lot for me personally. But there's a few cuts I really like in this film, and I think the editing throughout is actually pretty good. And at some points I think it's stellar. But yeah, that was just something I noticed. I think the tone for me is something we'll talk about in spoilers, but I do just want to say, and you'll have to indulge me for a minute. If you're a Beatles fan, this film essentially is the White Album tonally. It's it is a little bit like you start out and you're like, all right, sick, this is good. And then things happen and you're like, strange. All right, I'm still on board. And by the end, you're listening to babies cry, and it's like very strange. You're in Revolution number 9 by the end. So tonally, that's where I would say it ends up is like, yeah, you're listening to the White Album. So, but I like the White Album and I like this film. So I think it's a fair comparison. I would say this film is kind of definitely not where Don't Worry Darling should have ended up as a film, if people have seen that, but kind of the itch I wanted scratched by Don't Worry Darling is what this film scratches well.
Yeah, I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can go into that point specifically more, but I feel like Don't Worry Darling got a lot of clout and a lot of hype behind it that was kind of undeserved, whereas this film, I feel like actually scratches that itch, and it hasn't been getting the traction Don't Worry Darling has. So,
To be fair,
I mean,
it
they
was
obviously,
relevant in like the drama circuit because like the whole like Harry Styles stuff was kind of popping off and all that.
yeah.
You know, like the beef
I mean,
backstage and stuff. Like I think
that
that's
one,
what drew a lot of people into that film. You know, in
well,
the first place.
100%. And obviously,
Yeah,
there's a thousand different factors going on for what makes a movie popular or not popular.
100%.
This one apparently got Cannes Screenplay of the Year.
Yeah.
Um, so it's obviously getting attention. It's just obviously not on the level of like having star power of Olivia Wilde, Chris Pine, and Harry Styles in your film, which is a shame, and
Mm-hmm.
Florence Pugh. But I don't think this film needs it really. But like, yeah, that's just a. I felt like this film was what I wanted from a film like Don't Worry, Darling as well. That it was able to take leaps as well that I hadn't really, maybe not hadn't seen before, but it was willing to go a bit further than Don't Worry, Darling was. That felt quite vanilla compared to this, given that they kind of started out in similar, not places, but like a similar vibe, I guess.
Yeah, because we were kind of like for Don't Worry Darling, we were kind of waiting for that like, okay, when is the twist going to happen? And it happened. Like, is that it? Like, really? Is it really as simple as like just a fictional world
Yeah.
essentially? You know what I mean? Like, okay,
They both
fair
have
enough
simple
then.
concepts like that as well, like simple, just developed concepts. The thing I
Yeah.
would say is that, and you can comment on whether you agree with this or not, but I would say Don't Worry Darling felt like an overlong Black Mirror episode, but like a mediocre Black Mirror episode. This one felt like a pretty good Black Mirror episode that was also too long, but not egregiously long like I felt Don't Worry Darling was.
Mm-hmm.
Like Don't Worry Darling felt like it could have just been an episode of a TV show. This one felt like it could have it was enough to be a movie essentially. This as a TV show might have been too quick for like an hour episode. It maybe needed a
Yeah.
bit more legs than that. Whereas Don't Worry Darling, I feel like you could have squashed into an hour episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that.
I know it's been a long time since Don't Worry Darling came out, but that's how I felt at the time, and I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's the closest thing I can compare it to in like in terms of a recent Black Mirror-esque, Twilight Zone-esque film.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's all my notes for non-spoilers. I'll also say, in fact, last thing, there's a lot of nudity in this as well. Nudity, gore, and like
Yep.
violence, stuff like that, body horror. So if you're egregiously against one of those things, I would keep that in mind. I would still check it out, but like keep it in mind. And if you're really, really not a fan of those things, then obviously steer clear. But it's
I
quite
would
indulgent.
say, I will say, like the movie is like very like in your face, but it's like at the same time you do get used to it. You know what I mean? In the sense of like you don't
Well,
like
you do.
not, but you know what I mean. Like I like obviously like the lad in me is like, oh yeah, boobs, but like at the same time you do just like kind of like just zone it out. You know what I mean? Like you just it's just so it's because it's shown so often in the film where it's like a bit it's
Yeah.
not really that like surprising anymore. You know.
The director adding another 3 pages of close-up dance
Well,
ass.
it's saying that I'd like to like point this out as well. It's a female writer and director, so it's like
Right.
it's so people can't like make that
Yeah.
statement of like, oh, just this guy's like zooming in on our fingertips all day or whatever. It's like, no, that's not like what happened, you know. So I think that's interesting though, because I think
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
would be a very difficult film for a guy to make. You know what I mean? Like there'd be very harsh judgments being thrown
Yeah.
around.
Unless
If
he's Greek, in which case people will call it a masterpiece. Not throwing
oh,
shade.
of course, yeah, of course,
Um,
of course.
anyway, um, I'm happy to swap over to spoilers if you are, unless there's
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about this, man.
Okay. Right. So, audience, thank you for joining us. If you were watching for the spoiler-free portion, we are now going full spoilers. That's your alert. So, I think. Okay, we'll go back to general points. I was going to stick on nudity, but we'll come back to that. So,
Mhm.
general points, spoiler-wise, I do think, for me, it does go off the rails at the end.
I was
And
going to say something. Yeah.
it does have too long an ending, I think, as well. It kind of felt like it was wrapped up. and then it kept going, and then it kept going, and then they have a big set piece, and then it kept going. And I like all these individual elements, and especially the way they're shot and stuff like that. But all together, I think it's just too long at the end.
For me, it's not even about length. It's just like I was saying to Robert, like to me, up until a certain point, I was like, this might be one of my favorite horror films ever because I just love the concept. I think the acting is pretty flawless throughout. I like the. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, right? And then it got to the last hurdle, and I was like, okay, now we're just kind of taking the piss. You know what I mean? With the final transformation. That's when I was like, all right, this is just like body horror for the sake of it now. Like I didn't see the like artistic appeal anymore, you know. So they did lose me at that point. I was like, what am I watching? It feels like I'm watching like a spoof on bloody like the freaking Elephant Man or something, you know what I mean? Like just like some like wild thing. But before that I was super into it. Like I was so like invested in the whole thing. But yeah, so honestly, like I was like leaning at like a 9, maybe not a 10, but like when the third, I'm not gonna say third act because the third act is pretty long, but like the final hurdle, that's when they lost me a little bit, just a little bit too far, you know.
Yeah.
You know, like I would have been completely happy if the film ended when she took the serum when she wasn't supposed to at the end, and then you've seen the mirror what she looks like, and then it just cuts. I'd be way more happier than that than to like continue doing like the show and all that stuff and like the spraying the blood everywhere in the audience. It's just too much. It's just too much. I was just like, what am I watching at that point? And I'm seeing Demi Moore's face freaking crawling on the floor. I'm like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like at that point, people walked out the cinema. You know, like I'm not lying.
Oh,
Like,
really?
It's that period when people start to walk out. They're fine for the rest of the film. It's just that point. And I don't blame them because I was honestly thinking about it as well. I was like, you know what? In my mind, the film ended here. You know, just
the thing is, I don't disagree with anything you've said in terms of like this film could have been that, and it could have just ended there, and you can completely see a cut of this film the way you've just described.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this just really clicked with me at the end as well. I don't know why. I don't know. I just really enjoyed it.
Try and explain.
So,
like, what about it was like appealing?
I think it's because the film knew what it was doing. It wasn't like this happened by accident. It's like they got to this point, and thing is, I'm not totally okay with it. I do have an issue with quite a lot of it anyway. But like I say, scene to scene, it's like it knew what it wanted from me, and that's what I was getting from it. You know, where when it was being self-indulgent with the blood spray, I was just having a great time laughing. Like I assumed the film meant for me to laugh at those points. I'm not certain that it is intended that way, but the way it's shot, the way it's cut, like the strange dialogue and stuff like that, and the reactions, especially in the audience's face, it's like I feel like this is a comedy now. Like I should be laughing, and I was. And I was like, that's what I mean. It's tonally like it is very strange, and it does not match up. And I think the biggest issue probably with the end is that it does come out of absolutely nowhere. Like this thing is, there's no. I mean, you can deduce that there's something could go wrong, and early on they show you the big vial of activator serum, and the whole film, racking my mind around it, was if it's only one use, why the fuck would they give you enough for more than one use? Just fill a syringe and put that in the box. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, put a stopper on it. Why would they ever even take the risk of like having someone have more than one activator serum? But you don't get the end of the film like that. But yeah, I don't know. It just felt like so like I don't know. This film knew what it wanted to be, even if it didn't make sense. So I can at least respect the kind of.
I think it makes sense.
Indulgence.
It's just like how much am I willing to like?
No. It makes sense.
My disbelief.
Well, it makes sense logically. That's the thing. In terms of like logical steps, it makes sense. But in terms of like tonal sense and like what you've gotten from the film up to that point versus what the ending is, and in that sense of logic, that there's a kind of split there, rather than like internal logic within the story itself. The internal logic, I feel like, does make sense, but mostly. Yeah, it's more the tone, and from that complete shift from kind of psychological, like internal, and there's a bit of ambiguity with who's in control and how much they're in control and how much they differ as
Mhm.
people, even though they're supposed to be the same person. And the guy on the phone's kind of like essentially gaslighting them, where he's saying, "You are one, like fix your own problem," basically. But there's clearly something going on where it could be like a now this is going to be like a this is going to be a total man comment. It could be like a hormonal thing with women where it's like I don't want to say that, but like you know what I mean, where it's like this is a young woman and this is an old woman, and biologically there are different things going on at different periods in their lives, and that might be affecting the way their brain acts. So that's why the characters act differently, and even just the allure of this thing that allows you to go back, allows you to be young for a period, is like corrupting, you know?
Yeah, it's
That
addicting.
that's
Mhm.
intriguing, but also the idea that they disagree even though they're supposed to be the same person and stuff like that, where you've taken advantage of yourself, which I felt like it was a great kind of
Yeah,
comparison to how
but
people act anyway,
I
taking them
I
for
kind of
granted.
took that as like when you're saying like she's disagreeing with herself and stuff, but it's like in the moment, it's like you're not thinking about the other half of yourself. You're just like, oh no, like this could benefit me right now. So I'll just take the sacrifice for the older body. But then like just thinking like, oh, it's fine. I can just return to the like normal body anyway. Then you go back to the old body and you realize how like freaking mutilated you are, and you're like, oh no, I should have done that. But it's just easier to blame the other person, rather than blame yourself for like your choices and stuff like that. But I think that's the moral of the story, right? Because at the end of the day, she decided to do it. You know what I mean? Like no one like forced her. Obviously, the people like played a bit like to kind of convince her and make put it into her life and stuff. But she is the one that freaking injected herself and got the freaking drug in the first place. All that
And
jazz.
the other point is obviously the main one that gives you a lot of kind of removes sympathy from the older version is that she had a chance to get out, right? Before
Yeah.
it got bad. And she
Hmm.
eventually takes it, but too late.
Yeah.
Uh, I will say the one thing I did like about the end, and this is more just like an imagery visual thing, is that they build up the old woman to be the kind of monster initially,
Right.
where she's getting more, and to the point where it was literally like a witch's cauldron. She's going through that French cooking book, and she's literally cooking up dishes, and it's like she's leaving the place in a fucking state. She's got grey hair. She's arched over back. Like she's literally taking on the form of like a kind of fairy tale witch, like a
Hmm.
wicked witch,
Yeah.
And they kind of lead you down that road of, oh, she's going to become the monster. She's going to become the monster. But then when shit comes down to it, and they're both around at the same time simultaneously, it's actually reversed. She's the victim in that initially.
Hmm.
It's the younger version that kind of takes on that like Jack Torrance like chasing around the house, I really like that kind of reversal of like you expected it to be the other way around, that she was going to take out the younger version, but it was like the total opposite. I really like that.
Yeah.
But
No, I like that too.
yeah, just fucking absolutely wild. Just really
Hmm.
wild.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to comment on, like just off the back of that before I come?
Yeah. I think it's a nice little change of pace because I mean, like, I think the older woman was always going to be the victim of the story because at the end of the day, she's the original body, and she's the one that's suffering from all the choices they're making. But yeah, no, it was just a nice little twist because, like you're saying, like she looks like the monster, yet in the scene she's the victim. So it's a nice little twist like that.
No, I do want to come back to the nudity quickly as well. The usually with because essentially to me, this is gonna bring out my inner granddad, and you're going to be able to tell how old I am from this, or internally how old I am, is that to me, in art in general, nudity is like obviously nudity is very prominent in art, and especially with people who look at art and go, yes, with scarves and jumpers. It tends to be nudity that they're like, they go to. Like, oh, you go to an art gallery and it's so it's fucking ridiculous. Like, just nudity everywhere. But
Yeah.
and it's not that I have a problem with nudity in art. It's that I feel like nudity in art is such an accessible way into it to make it seem elevated because it's so accessible. Everyone's got a bit of nudity. You just find an attractive girl. Go on Reddit on photography, and it's just all naked women, and people just like it to oblivion. And it's like I'm more interested in photography. I'm never going to be able to photograph a naked woman. How am I going to learn from this? I'm not learning composition from looking at like this. It's just filled with it. It's absolutely saturated. So when there's nudity used in something like this in an artistic way, or intended in an artistic way, I'm usually quite pessimistic with it because it's, like I say, it's so accessible. It's so easy to get clout from it just by including it. Whereas I think nudity is if not essential to this film, is actually aiding in the point of the film, which is usually rare for
I
nudity.
agree. Yeah, I agree.
Usually it's just indulgent. It's usually just there for the sake of it because you can.
It's important to see the before and after. You know what I mean? And not by that as in the monster, but just like when she becomes the younger version, because you see the sort of like, because let's just say it. Like, Demi Moore's a freaking attractive woman, right? I don't care how old she is, right? So when she like reveals herself in the bathroom, you look in and she's seeing flaws in herself, right? But I'm just seeing like, mate, freaking you look great. But then you do see the younger version, and then you see like her point of view. It's like, oh, you know what? No, I do see like the differences now. Oh yeah, she's got a little bit more smoother skin. She's got less like wrinkles there, whatever. You know, so it's like then I understand why she's made that decision. You know, so it kind of helps you put yourself in her mind when they do that. So I think nudity was used for a good reason there. Obviously, it's like used to like throughout the film, like there's always stuff being shown about. But I think it is important to see that, as well as when you see her become the monster. I don't want to call her a monster, but you know what I mean. Like when she becomes like a freaking mutilated bloody version of herself. Not the final form, but like when she's like the like the witches. She kind of looks like her, from the witches Roald Dahl bloody movie. But just to see the before and after, you know what I mean? Because I think this movie does a really good job of you kind of like having the journey at the same time as the character. What's her name? Elizabeth. Yeah, Elizabeth Sparkle, I think it was. Because like I'm literally like going through the same things as her. Like when things are revealed to her, they're revealed to me. Like I'm picking up stuff that she's finding flaws in herself. And I think one of the biggest ones for me was when she brings her own picture back, like the big photo frame that she had on the wall, when she's like all been mutilated, she brings the photo back into the living room and she's looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, you weren't freaking that bad looking to begin with, you know what I mean? Like, was it really worth it? Like all this to look like this now, you know what I mean? Just to have like a little bit of youth again, you know? So I think like as weird of a bloody film it is, I think it does have a good message behind it, where it's like everyone's got flaws and everyone's going to see flaws in themselves that other people don't see flaws in. Like I just said, I think Demi Moore's a really attractive woman, but she, like the character anyway, sees flaws in herself that other people don't. For example, they have that male character that's in the film who's like saying, "Oh my god, you're beautiful. You're just as beautiful as you were in high school." Like in the moment, it feels just like a throwaway character, but then they use that down the line. I'm like, "Oh right, no, that's a really good use of him," because now you're kind of showing that no, people do find you attractive. It's just these like super corrupt bloody. I was going to say government people. They're not government people, but just like these like what do you call them?
Showbiz.
Like our boss, essentially. Like the way showbiz views her isn't like the ideal version. Like the normal dude in the freaking down the road, like you're really attractive, you know. So it's like I think it's really well done, you know, in that aspect, and that's why we love the film. Because at the end of the day, it's like still like a good like concept and a good message behind the film as well. It honestly like boosted my own confidence when I left the film, honestly, because I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm not that bad. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So it's like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, so that's my take on the nudity. I think it was used in a good way. Unlike for me, Poor Things was just so explicit, and it's just like it was just vile in the sense of. I mean, obviously the story didn't help because, like, if you didn't watch it, she's got the child of a mind of a child, and so that just isn't like a nice like connection I want to make with nudity. So
The other
it's
thing
like
is,
automatically negative, you know.
I mean, the thing is, in that sense, that I don't think the nudity helps Poor Things in terms of like cementing the themes of the film. You know, they're not necessary. Like the themes are what the themes are. The nudity is just there to be explicit in my eyes. This film is it. I think that's why I made the big distinction is that the nudity is actually kind of essential to getting across the theme and the message. And like you say, you need to see the before and after. And also, like you say, she's an attractive woman, like even at the beginning. But like at the end of the day, she's in her 60s. Like you're never going to be like your 23-year-old self or whatever again. It's like there's a clear distinction, and that needs to be seen, sort of thing. You know? So you're absolutely nail on the head with that.
100%. I want to talk about the concept, though, right? The concept as a whole, because I think it was a really interesting one because I don't think I've seen anything like that before, where it's like, oh, you make a double of yourself as a younger version of what you were, and then all these rules. I like the rules because like when you introduce rules in these type of films, you need to show, okay, what happens when you go against the rules, and they do that through the whole film, which is like
Yeah.
you're enjoying the body you're in. You know what I mean? You're like, well, I might as well preserve this body and just let the other one rot. You know what I mean? I'll just deal with the consequences here. Obviously, that doesn't like work out.
I think you make a good point about the rules.
Mm,
Is that they don't really need to be explained either. They're literally on a piece of paper. Do this once a week, do this once a day. That's all you need. There's no like, oh, this is why it's this way. This is what the serum is. This is what needs to be done. It's very like cut and dry. It knows what it needs to tell you, and it's confident enough to do that and not give you any more. There's no background to the substance. You know what I mean? We don't need to know more than this shadowy thing. They've given her this serum. It's an ongoing process for a bunch of people. It happened.
mm-hmm.
That's all you need to know, and it keeps the mystery as well in a really great way.
What I did like, they did me a little bit because when she first goes into the sort of like locker room, I'm like, well, there's like 20 odd other lockers, so I'm like, sure, there's other people in the world like this, and there is. Like the doctor that gave her the serum was one of them. I thought that was a nice little reveal later on as well. You see the older version of him, like the original body of him, and how he's like screaming her and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, okay, so they're like, it's not just her, because if it was just her, to me it'd be like, oh, well, it's like it just feels very like it doesn't feel as like expansive. If I don't know if that's the right word, but it's more interesting knowing that other people are possibly going through this as well, rather than just this one character in the whole world. You know, it feels more realistic.
Did you find yourself like in that scene where the old man is like the young doctor grown up is talking to her in the cafe? I found myself being like, why is he taking his chance to be young again to be a nurse? Like things like that, where it's like you start asking questions about characters that just have only been in it for a few minutes. I really like that aspect as well, where it doesn't elaborate on it. It's just like she's obviously chosen it for showbiz. He's not in showbiz. Like, what was his reasoning for doing it? You never know, but like you can start to think about it in the moment, which is nice.
But it's like, you know, like we say that about him, but it's like at the end of the day, like she's like of all the things in showbiz to really strive towards, like is like the workout lads see on TV really like the biggest deal. You know what I mean? It's like, but obviously in her world it is. You know what I mean? Like that's like what she made her like life on in that. But so maybe he was the same. Like maybe he always wanted to be a doctor and like maybe dropped out of school or something. I don't know. But so that's what I mean. It's an interesting like, oh, what's his life like? You know, you're just like automatically thinking like, oh, you know. But I guess the point where it's like, oh, what did other films on other people? But at the same time, I'd rather just be like, I don't want it to be a franchisey type of thing. I want it to be a one-off. It's nice to imagine what other people would use this thing for as well, you know. But yeah, no, the concept alone, I was really hooked. And then, like I said, I didn't really know going in what it was about. Although I love the first shot of just the egg on the tray.
Yeah, no, yeah, good. I really like that as well.
Brilliant symbolism, so good. It just like it set up the film instantly. Where you're like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? Like this is what I'm waiting for now.
I mean, it's confident in what it's showing you.
Yeah. Speaking of symbolism, I love the way they use the Hollywood Star of Fame or whatever they call it as well. How like it shows like, oh, she's so relevant at first and everyone loves her, and then it just slowly becomes unused and people are just like freaking spitting on it. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a really nice visual.
Really visual as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just to show like her life as well, how it's like changed throughout the years.
You could just do a montage of her career and then like the downfall or whatever, or like you do. I guess like the default is like a news broadcast where it's like, oh, your ratings are down by so and so, whatever. But like, and especially because it kind of bookends the film as well. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
Even though, yeah, I think that becomes a bit too late at the end. But like, it's nice to have that visual anyway.
Not for sure.
Oh yeah, I do want to compliment the prosthetics and like the effects in general because they are pretty.
Oh yeah,
they are pretty great. Like especially like the big monster at the end. Like it or not, it's really impressive, and it does definitely echo back to things like The Thing, or even like the Twilight Zone. Like I can't remember what the name is. There's like a specific episode with like really Beauty is an eye, but the eye of the beholder. That episode, it's kind of reminiscent of that to me.
Right.
But yeah, really strange, odd visuals, but like and like grody, but not like sickening at the beginning when like she bursts out of her back and stuff, and she's like stitching up the old body and things like that, and it's like it is gore, but it's not indulgent really until the end. It's just grody,
Yeah.
But they're all really, really great. Like I think the only noticeable CG was probably the little like Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest esque like squid at the end where she like finally blows up and she's crawling like a little starfish.
Uh,
But it's fine. But the actual creature effects themselves, I think absolutely stellar. They look incredible.
yeah, but even like the subtle ones where like her fingers a little bit decayed, and then like half of her body starts to
Yeah.
decay. Like even that stuff is really good. Like they really did a good job of like aging her. You know, because again, that's kind of like important as well. Because if you don't buy into it, if it feels like a prosthetic, then it's like, well, it just kind of ruins the immersion. Like, no, it did a really good job. Like, that's what I mean. Like, because I won't lie, right? See, when I left it yesterday, I kind of left thinking like I didn't like it. Like, I was like really like, God damn it, they had something and they fucked that up. But I woke up today and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm still thinking about it, and at the end of the day, like, that's kind of what it's supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? And I really do appreciate the storytelling and the
Mhm.
like you said, the prosthetics and all that. It's just the last like 20 minutes, honestly, that's like just like too much for me. Like I said, you enjoyed it though. A lot of other people enjoy it. Like a lot of people at my work have been talking about it, and they've all enjoyed it. So it's like it's really just taste. Um, but yeah, no, it
Yeah.
was really fantastic. I want to shout out the actors as well. I think everyone did a really good job, especially like obviously the two main ones. Especially Demi Moore. I like, and I've been hearing this online as well, and it's a bit crap, right? How I think she's honestly put on a really career-defining performance here, right? But I don't think the Oscars going to blink an eye at this at all. There's no shot the Oscars show the substance as one of
I
like,
mean,
you know,
fair
I just
enough.
doubt
Like,
it.
I
I
get
just
it.
doubt it.
I mean, to me, I guess the Oscar, like, I don't give a fuck about Oscar. I mean, I know it's some like, I know what you mean, but at the end of the day, I don't know. The Academy's just bollocks to me anyway. So like,
No, 100%. Yeah,
I
it
don't.
shows. It shows more about them than it does about this film. Like they're
They're
not
not
willing
willing
to.
to
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like in the end of the day, she's done a fantastic performance. Yet you're not going to acknowledge her as one of the best actresses of the year. You know what I mean? So it's like that shows more about you than her. Like, especially if you let freaking Emma Stone bloody win last year. You know what I mean? Like I freaking love Emma Stone, but like come on
Embarrassment.
now. You know what I mean?
Embarrassment.
So I
the
mean,
but
so
yeah, even like, I mean, like Margaret Qualley, she's in. People will know her from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Probably that's where I recognized her from.
right.
She's kind of the younger like Manson girl that Brad Pitt kind of flirts with throughout the film.
We'll
But
see.
she's great in this as well, and she has quite a bit to do in this as well in terms of range, because obviously she gets to play a bit of a villain at the end as well. Not a villain, but just like a
Yeah,
slacker
I
kind of
think
thing. But
I think how I would like describe them both is that Demi Moore brought the more sort of emotional, realistic sort of acting performance, whereas the younger woman she brought a more physical because she doesn't speak that much. Like realistic, like when you really like look back, like she's just mainly posing and sort of like looking pretty for a
mm,
lot of the scenes. You know what I mean? And if she does speak, it's not like this like dramatic freaking performance or anything. It's just very like
mm,
calm demeanor. But she brought that physical performance, and obviously that's like also like freaking impressive, because you need to bring that sort of confidence to this freaking type of film, because you don't, it breaks itself apart,
yeah,
So they both equally did a really good job, I thought. And like I said, I think everyone else did a good job. Like even the boss, like even though he's a massive douchebag
yeah,
in
he's
the
great.
film,
Yeah.
he played it really well. So I can't
Well,
fault it.
and he's a bit like mustache twirly, but like who
100%.
cares? You know what I mean? He's like kind
But
of he's a horny, horrible executive, and I actually thought they were going to go further with him, and I'm actually glad they didn't. You kind of get the vibe anyway. You don't need to. I thought
yeah,
they were going to have him do things to the younger version and stuff like that. but
Right. Right.
like be that sleazy like Weinstein type. But you don't need to see that, and I think that's like, I guess like another positive. It knows to restrain itself there, where it's like you don't need to see that. You get that vibe off him anyway. So
Yeah, exactly.
the
Exactly.
horrible,
Especially
and
like the moment that like cleared up for me has been like they're in the hallway and like the flamingo girl's like, "Mom," and then he's like you
yeah,
totally get that vibe from him. You know what I mean? Like you
yeah,
totally get it.
yeah.
Like I agree with you. They didn't need to show anything or do anything with him. It was
And the
enough.
physical,
You know.
like that kind of physical comedy is also funny as well, and it's pretty good at that throughout the film as well, especially with like the neighbor and stuff as well. It's quite funny when it wants to be as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I will say you've spurred my memory on something else as well to do with that. Is that given that there's a lot of this film where Elizabeth or Sue is on their own, you always are aware of what they're thinking, and I think that's why I complimented the editing earlier. Is obviously there's a lot of physical cues, like the in the bouquet of flowers throughout the film, like the messages change based on whether it's for Elizabeth or Sue, or things like the billboard they use quite effectively, and things like the image of her older
Mm.
self. They use like visual cues to give you the thought process quite a lot, and sometimes you don't even need that because the acting in itself is enough.
Yeah.
But it also, that's what I mean, it's confident enough to take that in its stride where you're along for the ride and you don't need to hear every fucking thing, every thought come out of their mouth. The only one I will say that I would have liked to have not seen was, as in like oh, they've shown too much, is the old guy at the cafe. When he drops his wallet and the cards line out, I'm like, everyone in the audience already clicked that that was the doctor. You've
Yeah.
already shown the flashback. You don't need to see
Mm.
his card as well. We don't need more confirmation. That was like the only time where I was like, right, you've said too much, even though we
To,
already knew.
to me, the birthmark alone was enough for me. You know, on the wrist or something. You know,
Yeah,
because it was
yeah,
that
yeah,
clear
yeah,
with the
exactly.
doctor as well. You know, they didn't even need to do the flashback for me. That was like clear enough. But no, I totally agree with that. Actually, looking back.
But I think in general, the film's pretty good at not doing that. But that was the one that stuck out to me a bit like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and like you kind of point that it's like when she's looking at the sort of like billboard outside, depending on which version of her she is, there's different sort of like emotions coming from it. Because when she's like Demi Moore, the older version, she's looking at her like, oh, I want to be her again, or she's thinking like, screw her, she's freaking ruined my life, kind of thing, whatever. But
Yep.
when she's the younger version and she's looking at the Demi Moore picture, or the Elizabeth one, sorry, I should say, from like inside the house, she's thinking like to that. You know what I mean? It's like so interesting. But it's like you said, they don't say anything. You just kind of figure it out as they're looking, depending
And
on how the scene's going.
one of the best examples of that, and I actually think it seems a little too long, but I get why they did it like they cut it that way, is the scene where she goes for the date with Fred and she looks at the young
Yeah,
like body and she's like, oh, I need to change this. And then she looks at the billboard and she's like, I need to change this, I need to change
and they
this.
look better. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she just gives up.
Hmm.
But
And like that's something like let's be honest, that's something we don't necessarily relate with in the sense of like I because like let's be real, like women are have to like there's a certain like what would you call it, like a social standard, right, where they have to like look this way or whatever, right? And like I'm not going to put my like 2 cents on it or whatever, but just
yeah.
like in a general sense, that's typically how it's seen. And in this film, like obviously is doing
Well,
that. Whereas like
yeah.
the guys typically don't put that much like effort into like going out
You
or
get
whatever,
on a shave and
you
a nice
know.
shirt. Yeah. Let's
Exactly, you know
go.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's pretty simple. Whereas like she like have to do like makeup and all that, and it's like when you really see there, like having like a family of like three lassies, I see that like every day when I'm with them. Like they're just constantly like freaking like fixing stuff up, and I'm like, mate, you look fine. Like you know what I mean?
Uh,
Like you try to impress. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you're trying to just impress yourself. You know,
yeah.
like the other person doesn't really gonna care. Like I said, the guy from before, he was freaking like simping over her just when she was like in the street. You know what I mean? She wasn't even dolled up or anything. You know, so it's just like it's like I said, it's really interesting. I think girls will have a different take on the film because it's definitely more like they'll relate more, obviously, in ways we can't, just simply can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can still appreciate it for what it is, 100%. You know, and that's not
Yeah.
me being like a simp for it because, like, at the same time, I hate poor things, and that's trying to do the same thing. You know, and I think it failed at that epically. Whereas I think this is how you do that type of film. You know, it didn't feel too like not in your face, but like, what was the word? It's like not trying to like I didn't feel like it was trying to push this agenda or something on you. You know, it just felt like it was just a film, and it just happened to be about these two women, and this is her insecurities, you know, and it relates to the real world, you know. And I didn't feel like it was trying to push this on me. It just felt like I was just watching a film, you know. And that's and at the end of the day, for me, that's what I want. I don't want to watch this like political thing. I want to watch a film, and if it has a nice message, sick, you know. So
It stays focused,
I was
yeah, like you
happy.
say. It stays
Yeah.
focused on that message. I
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, I totally agree. And this film almost made me sympathize with being stood up, you know, for girls standing guys
There
up.
you go. Yeah, yeah. There you go.
Almost. Big emphasis on almost. Still not right, but almost. Um, yeah, yeah, no. Trying to think if there's anything I want to particularly. Now, this is nothing. This is a non-comment. Just the doctor at the very beginning, not the guy with the hand thing, the scar, the other doctor. I was watching cinema. I was like, bro, that guy looks like Tim Curry. That guy looks like fucking Tim. Is that Tim Curry's son? Does Tim Curry have a son? Bro, that guy looks like Tim Curry. And I looked up, no relation to Tim Curry, but he is Scottish.
Oh, really?
So there you
Oh,
go.
well.
But bro smiles. Bro has the same smile as Tim Curry. Look it up, and hopefully you'll be able to see it because I'm not crazy. But there you go.
No, I'm trying to think. No, there's nothing like the like score or music that really stood out for me.
I think
Usually,
the editing at the end and the music at the end, I was a really big fan of. Like the kind of it
right.
went kind of metal at the end, which was just unexpected. But
Mm,
yeah, that kind of balls to the wall. And like I actually the editing and like the transitions and kind of like having almost like the double exposure look, like two scenes kind of superimposed on each other. I really like that. I was really fond of that like visual with like the audience and like the hallway and stuff. And like
yeah.
spraying blood. It reminded me actually of those kind of similar scenes in the like Sam Raimi films, like the kind of Spider-Man montage when he gets his powers, or the kind of in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness when they're doing the kind of seance like spell thing. It kind of reminded me of those scenes where there's a lot of like strange visuals coming on the screen that are not in the same shot and stuff like that. It was cut
Mm,
that kind of way, and I'm really fond of that, the way that was edited. So
yeah.
props to that scene. And that might be why I bought into this a little bit, because it did feel a bit Sam Raimi towards the end. Not this. It's not the same as Sam Raimi because he's got a very particular flavor, but it felt like it was trying to achieve the same thing. Where it was like, at least at the very end, where it has that kind of, it's like satirical, like but like goofy comedy aspect to the horror, where it was trying to walk that line between like, am I supposed to laugh at this or fear it? You know? And I'm really fond of
Yeah.
that feeling in like Evil Dead, and Army of Darkness goes way more into that, but like that kind of feeling, I think that's probably where my like for this comes from, is my fondness for those films. And I would say
Right.
that's maybe why. So if you're into that kind of thing, it would probably be quite up your alley.
You know what it is for me? I think it's because it's so extreme, right? And I think the common audience member just isn't going to like it, and I'm just afraid that it's going to put them off for the whole film. Or they're going to disregard the rest of the film because the rest of the film's like really, really good.
It absolutely will.
But
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That's what I'm kind of afraid of because it's like I hope that's not what's happened because it almost happened to me. Like I said, I was like not on board last night, but it's because it was just like so in my face, and I was like, boys, the hell did I watch?
Well,
You know what I
and
mean?
this is the
So,
thing. It's like even with like Evil Dead and stuff like that, like if someone's not into that vibe, you can't talk them into liking it. It'll be the same with this. It's like if you took your parents to see this, I doubt you're going to be able to change their minds of how they feel about it after the fact.
but
Really.
with Evil Dead, that's happening throughout the film almost, whereas
Yeah.
this happens right at
Well,
the
that
end.
is the film. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? So it's like I'm just afraid that people are going to judge the rest of the film based on that one scene, essentially, or like part of the film.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like I said, people walked out of that part. For me, some people walked out, and
And
I don't blame them because it's mad.
I'll say the same.
But
I'll hold my hands up and say I enjoyed it, but I understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%, 100%. But yeah, man, like I don't know where to like rate this
And
film in regards of like the rest of the year because it's such a different film that it almost feels unfair to like judge it compared to other things. You
so
know,
when it comes out on DVD, when it comes to streaming, will you watch it again?
I think I will. You know, I would actually love to watch it with the boys, just
Do
to
you think
watch
this
their
has
reactions.
a similar vibe to Barbarian at points?
E- mm, yeah, Yeah, although I preferred this much more though
I
as a film.
also prefer this a lot more. Yeah.
But, like, I mean, like Barbarian was funny though. Like there was some funny
Yeah, yeah.
not just with the monster, but with the landlord and that. You like there was this
But yeah.
funny bit. Um, whereas like I didn't find this film funny. I don't think I was supposed to. You know what I mean? Until the end, potentially. Um, but I wasn't laughing. I was more just like the fuck, like what's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah, yeah.
So it honestly just depends on what mood you're in, you know. So
Yeah.
fairly,
I'm not even certain I can explain why. Mine was you're like the fuck, what's going on? Mine's just like the fuck, cool.
yeah, fair, fair.
um I think this is a weird thing to comment on at the end, I guess, because we're wrapping up. But
Mhm.
I noticed like I was a bit confused with the world because they obviously have this drug, and then it seems like the world's kind of split between past and present at times.
Right.
Because like a lot of the cars on the street are old, like 70s era looking cars, you know, like 60s, 70s kind of older, like much
Yeah.
blockier cars, and some of the cars are much more modern. And there's like a lot of retro phones and stuff like that, but then there's also smartphones, there's flat screen TVs, but it's kind of got
Well,
that weird thing, and I
yeah.
think that's to do with the theme of the thing as well, right? Is that she's obviously thinking about her past. She's jumping into
Mhm.
her previous body. The world kind
Yeah.
of resembles that as well,
Hmm.
and I don't
Yeah.
exactly know where that fits in exactly, but like it's just something I noticed where I'm like, oh yeah, there's a lot of like vintage things about, you know, as
Hmm.
well in this
No,
world that should be modern.
it definitely felt like it was a period piece almost, but like you said, there were like some like modern aspects to it. But again, like the whole idea, like what would you call her? Like a fitness like model or something? Like what would you? What was the actual job that she had? Like I see them on TV all the time.
Yeah.
It's like it's such a weird random thing to like aim for, but like I said, maybe back in the day that was more of like a like
Oh yeah, in the
prestigious
80s
thing,
and stuff.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Exactly. Whereas now it's like, freaking who watches that? You know, you'd be on YouTube or something watching some instructor or
Joe
something.
Wicks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What I was gonna say is, I think like I probably should have said this at the non-spoiler bit, but like I think either way you're gonna come out with a strong opinion of this film. You're either gonna like really think it's vile and disgusting and hate it, or you're gonna come out and being like, "Wow, that was like something different." You know what I mean? I don't think you're ever gonna get a guy saying like, "Oh, that's kind of mid," or
I
like,
think even
"Our
within the
opinion."
film, like you say, it'll be extreme as well, where it'll be like, oh, I really like that start bit, but not the end.
Mm-hmm.
Or I really loved all of it. I can't imagine someone's going to come out. I mean, maybe they will, but people are people. But I can't imagine you'll be watching the first 2 hours of the film, and be like, man, this is boring, and at the end go, wow, you
Yeah,
know?
because it doesn't like take too long to get into it. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty well paced. I would say. You know, it's not like it takes like half an hour to get the serum. Like she gets
Oh.
it pretty like quickly. You know.
I would say I think there is probably a section in the middle where one of the sequences where she's younger for a long period of time. I feel like you can cut out one of those and get like you know what I mean, like a 5-10 minute segment of her being young and taking advantage of it. I feel like by the time they do it a few times, you get the point. I feel like you could take out one of those because there was a point where I was a bit like, I'm not
Mm.
certain that anything we're seeing here is exactly new. They have that weird drumstick scene. That's probably the most confusing bit of this whole film for me is the drumstick.
Yeah, there was two for me because of the drumstick, and then there's the scene where she's in her sort of like bodysuit. It gets unzipped, and like a whole bunch of meat just falls
Yeah,
out of her
I
back.
actually really love that, but yeah,
Yeah, but like I see that more as like that's because it was clear like that didn't happen. So
yeah.
it was that just like a sort of like metaphor that I didn't understand, or what?
One
You
thing
know, or
for
is that
sure.
a sort of
Yeah.
like nightmare sequence that happens when she's like transferring to the next body or something? I'm not sure, but like I
Well,
said, I'm not gonna like say
analyze
it's
it.
like a perfect film because I still
Yeah.
don't understand some stuff. But but yeah, but no, I'm actually really interested to hear like Robert's opinion on this film if he was to see it. You know, because like he's a weird one with opinions. You know, he could go either way. You know what I mean? So it's like this could be up his alley, but it could just not be as well. You know, like I could totally see him watching the end and be like, "No, that's terrible. What is that?" But I could also see him be like, "Oh, that's the best one I've ever seen." So I don't know
Yeah,
what his take would be at all, which makes me interested. But yeah, I think I said all my takes. If you got anything to
I have as
say,
well. Yeah,
obviously, yeah. Well, what about like I said then? Okay, where would this sort of rank for this year's film so far?
I think before I make a conclusive opinion on it, I do want to see it
Mhm.
again. When it
You
comes
do,
out, wherever it comes out. Yeah,
yeah.
I want to watch it again at some point. Probably like you say, in like with friends or something.
That would
Just
be funny.
yeah.
Yeah,
But probably quite high in this year, honestly. I know this year's been a bit rough anyway. We've had a few like diamonds in the rough, but and like Dune and stuff like that. But we've kind of had a bit of a shitty year, I think.
yeah.
There's
It's been
not
up and
really been a
down.
lot.
Yeah.
Like in general, just even like quantity wise, there's just not really been as many
Like
films out of
there's
high
been good
quality.
films, but there's not been any like standout ones where it's like, oh, that's like contender for best. Because like for
Yeah.
me, it was Alien Romulus up until that point, but this
Mm.
might be like I think it might be on equal bar now, where it's like
Do
I like
you?
them both for different reasons, but
I
yeah,
think this film scratches an itch that I know I will be itching for in the future. In the same way that Talk to Me, that one last year, the horror film.
yeah,
That's like it's unique enough of a horror flick for me to be interested to come back later on in the
mhm,
same way that this is, where there'll be a day where I'm like, oh, that's what I want to watch.
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like it
I
has
agree.
enough of a unique identity to do that. So yeah, I will definitely watch it again. I'm assuming, but
100%. Well,
yeah,
honestly, I'm kind of surprised at the because I honestly thought you were going to hate it, but also at the same time, I didn't even know what my official thoughts were
yeah,
until like midway
yeah.
through today. Um, so I was like, oh, maybe we're probably going to talk about it for like 15, 20 minutes, but we've like talked like almost an hour on this. But
Oh,
it just shows how much like there was to talk about at the end of the day. So that's a good thing,
I
you
enjoyed
know.
myself. I'll probably enjoy myself again. I would recommend to certain
Yes.
people, as you've heard earlier in the review, gore,
Hmm.
etc., etc. If you can handle all that, go for it, mate.
Yeah.
But I can see this being like back in the days of Blockbuster. If this had come out like way back when, this is the one that the weird guy at the counter would recommend you, and you'd be like, "Man, this guy's fucked up, but he's got good taste." Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like because there's two different types of like body horror in this sort of like category, right? There's like the what do we say, the thing, right, which is like really regarded as like a fantastic film, even though it's like gruesome and disgusting. And then there's like the freaking Human Centipede, which is like also disgusting, but it's not regarded as a good film. This could have been either one of those.
Yeah.
You know, I do see it more as a
And
good film
I
on
think
as like the thing.
this does fall into the category for me of like Sam Raimi-esque, Black Mirror-esque, American Werewolf in London-esque, like with the body horror,
Right. Yeah.
kind of that realm. So if you're into those films, I would give this a watch. It's probably not going to beat those films if you love those films, but it'll be up there. It's that kind of alley you're up. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for
there you
sure.
go.
Happy days.
So
Well, happy with that. That was good.
I am also
Good little
happy with
topic.
that.
Yeah.
So new film, go. I unfortunately I don't think it's going to have legs in cinema because it's no longer playing at mine, but
Yeah, it won't.
the
It won't be.
it's
It won't do
it's
well.
on Mubi. They've published it, I believe, or distributed it at least, and they
Yeah.
have their streaming service. I don't know when it's going to be up there. I think in the US it might already be up there. So if you're listening to us from the US, go check it out on there. And if you're in the UK or elsewhere, you might just have to wait for it. But I'd say
I
it's worth a
reckon.
watch.
I reckon it'll do well on streaming. I reckon it's that type of film that'll like pique people's interest. It's like, oh, I'm going to the cinema to watch it, but I'll happily like, load up in
Yeah.
the living room and watch it that way. Yeah.
And if you were disappointed with Don't Worry, Darling, maybe give this a watch.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's it.
So yeah, I think that's our review. So thank you for watching, and check back in with us. We'll have plenty of reviews up on the channel and in the coming days and weeks. So yeah, thank you for watching, and make sure you come back.